Welcome to the Foxgrove Podcast, the podcast in which I'm going to try not to talk about myself for 2 hours this time because no one gives a shit, no one wants to know, and I'm just kidding. No, actually, people were pretty nice. Last podcast, there's a pretty positive reception, and people were actually really darn nice, so I shouldn't say that, but I don't feel like just talking about myself today. We're going to cover more important and serious topics. We're going to talk about the news. We're going to talk about Gaza, Israel, and Palestine. We're going to talk about Russia and Ukraine. No, we're not. No, we're not. We're not talking about any of that. We're going to talk about a little bit about Yu-Gi-Oh! We're going to talk a little bit about some video game news and just things that have been going on the internet that have piqued my interest, and I thought they would be good things to talk about today. In other news, we had the old now helldiver controversy, which seems to have blown away at this point, but if you were unaware of what was going on, people were mad at the creators of Helldivers, the video game here, because we don't know if it was their thing, probably wasn't their idea, it was probably Sony's idea. But now, even if you were a PC user of the game, to sign in to be able to play Helldivers 2, you were going to have to create and sign in to a PSN account, which a lot of people were annoyed with, and a lot of people are in countries where they cannot have a PSN account, rendering their game useless. And even people who are in countries like the United States, which they can have PSN accounts, were also mad because, well, they don't want to have a PSN account because Sony is notorious for losing your data and having your information stolen. So people are not interested in that, and they're just not interested in one more hoop to being able to play a game. Gone are the days where you used to just blow into a cartridge to get the dust out, shove that thing in your console, and the game would pop on. Sometimes it wouldn't. You would have to smack it a little bit, but ultimately it wasn't the developer putting some sort of block where, hey, you got to sign in to play the game, right? Gone are the days where you didn't have to be online to play a damn game. And this got my attention, and I was thinking about this just yesterday because I haven't done this in a long time, but I actually walked into a GameStop and I had all these old games, like not old games. I had PS4 games, old Nintendo Switch games, old DS games. I had PS5 games, all these games that I've already beat and I didn't want to play anymore. And I brought them in and actually got cash for them and store credit. And I walked out with a bunch of games. I walked out with a couple Fire Emblem games that I wanted. Walked out with Mario Party, which turned out to be pretty shit. That was a bad purchase. And some other cool tchotchkes that I had been looking forward to getting for a while. So that was cool and reminded me, man, I should always buy physical games because I actually can sell them. Right? Because I was trying to buy Fire Emblem Three Houses and Fire Emblem Engage. I like them, but I don't like them enough to pay $60 for them, right? So I've been on eBay doing the whole auction thing and realizing that eBay auctions are not legitimate because last second somebody's using some sort of sniping tool and they just always win the auction last minute no matter what you do. Is just completely stupid and pointless. So I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So I took my games to GameStop, and man, they actually gave me a bunch of store credit for it. And I thought they were fair with some of the games that I brought in. Some of them not so much, but most of them they were pretty fair. And I actually walked out of there with some stuff that I wanted. And I'm like, dude, I remember this. I remember when you actually had physical discs and you would bring them in and you could sell them and trade them or give it to your friends and they could play. It wasn't this digital only version thing, which I am guilty of. I've become so accustomed to just buying and purchasing something digitally and not having a physical copy of it that it felt really weird to walk in with this bag. Like I felt like a homeless guy walking in with my bag of tchotchkes to pawn, to go to the pawn store and pay my rent with. It wasn't the case though. It was just my old games. And dude, I walked out with a bunch of cool stuff. I was pretty happy with that. So I think that ties into the Helldivers thing where people are sick of not being able to just pop their game in and play the game. Having to sign in, make an account for the game, make an account on PlayStation, have an account on Steam, have an account on this, on that, and then be bombarded with advertisement, emails, microtransactions. And I think people are just fatigued between like subscriptions, spam emails, ads, and sign-ins and passwords and resets. I think people are just pretty fed up. Like they want to just like put the damn game in the console or click on the Steam game and fire it up and just be able to play, Whatever happened to just being able to play your games, just being able to use the things you paid for? It's like you're now advertised and sold stuff while having bought something, you know? It's like, I imagine this dystopian future where you buy like a smart refrigerator, right? That has a touch screen. And before you can open your refrigerator and get the chicken, you gotta watch like a Blue Chew ad or something like that. You gotta watch a MeUndies ad before you can get your fucking chicken. That's the future I imagine. Your fridge is temporarily locked for the next 15 seconds while you hear about Blue Chew in ED. Is that the future we're walking to? You go to make your coffee, you click the button. Have you heard about MeUndies? Well, while your coffee makes, give us 30 seconds to talk to you about Fruit of the Loom. In other even older news that nobody cares about, hey, people like tits. That's what we found out today. Turns out that people are upset with the creators of Stellar Blade or Sony. We still, as far as I know, we still don't know who's at fault. But Stellar Blade was advertised as this game that was very rated M for mature, right? The girls were wearing outfits that were very revealing. We saw photos of it. We saw cinematics. We had an idea of what the game and the outfits were going to look like. And I being one of those people that was like, hey, this is just not for me. I'm not against it. I don't have a problem with it. To each their own. But it doesn't seem like the type of game that I would be extremely interested in, like kind of like hack and slash. Like it's just not my type of game that I'm all about, right? But people were sold a certain aesthetic, a certain vibe for the game. And when it came time for the final product, they censored the whole thing. So they made the outfits less revealing. They diminished the amount of blood that the character would have on them after combat. And people were pretty upset. And they started this whole petition thing to free Stellar Blade from the censorship. And you know, this is not the hill that I want to die on per se, but I understand why people are upset. It's the whole idea. It's the same thing with Helldivers. When you bought Helldivers, they didn't say anything about needing a PSN sign-in, right? As far as I know. A lot of these games, they're sold a certain way now, and then they do a 180 and they change it. So we were sold this game where the girl's supposed to be semi-nude, and now she's almost semi-nude, but a little less. So people are upset, and you know what? I'm all about it. I'm behind them. Fuck these companies, you know, lying to people. If you're going to sell me a game where the girl's supposed to have her tits out and I buy it and her tits are not out, that's a problem, bro. We paid for the tits. We want the tits. All right? So I'm all about it. I'm with the people. I didn't even buy the game and I'm not interested in it, but I'll sign the petition. I stand with the people, you know, for being against the censorship and just being for not getting duped, you know? In other extremely amazing and scientific news, the kids of TikTok are doing something now called shifting. If you haven't heard of this miraculous wonder of science, it is the practice where you shift your consciousness into other existences and other multiverses and other realities where you can attend Hogwarts. And I thought a lot of this was a meme. I thought it was a meme. I was, you know, I'm not going to say I was hoping it was a meme. I was sure that it was a meme, but turns out it's not a meme. It turns out that people actually believe this and people are actually doing it. You know, back in my day, people used to just smoke crack. You know, people used to just buy a crack pipe, sit on the curb, and they used to go to another dimension and just tweak out on the floor. Now, no, the kids are too good for that. They lay in bed and they export their consciousness into another reality. They just tweak out at home and imagine themselves going to Hogwarts. This is actually a real thing. People are so fed up with our reality and the world we live in that they are actually convincing themselves that they're in another dimension and trying to shift themselves to a different consciousness or something. I mean, honestly, I don't blame them. To me, that's just called daydreaming, what they're doing, you know, but people truly, genuinely believe that they're going on these like 1 year, several months long trip to somewhere else and they come back and it's only been like an hour, right? People are actually convincing themselves of that. And can you blame them, right? Is it really worth living in the world that we live in? You know, working your life away. These politicians now talking about raising the age of retirement. Never being able to buy a house because of BlackRock and all these giant companies buying all the property so that normal people can never own a home and rent being over $2,000. Is it surprising that people are not having kids and they're shifting into other dimensions? You know, it's not just here in the US. You think sometimes, oh, there's just some American fuckery. Americans are just weird. It's not, dude. Like, have you seen what they've been doing in China lately? China's having this, a lot of this news and this type of stuff we don't get in the West because a lot of our media is propagandized and we don't hear a lot about China, especially on certain websites I won't mention because I like my channel. However, Chinese kids are giving up on working. They're completely withdrawing from the workforce. So China's facing a few different problems right now. Number one, if you don't know this, China had a one child only policy for the longest time. So pretty much every family, both parents could only have one kid. And it was very sad because oftentimes they would opt to having a male kid. It was preferable because of wealth acquisition and things like that. So they would dispose of female children, and that led to a massive crisis in the country where a lot of kids weren't born. Right, so they tried to combat overpopulation with a method that turned out not to work too well, and now they're having another problem where they are still highly populated, but they're highly populated by old people. So they really, really depend on young workforce to work their factories and so on. But now, what little workforce they have left of these young people to work these factories like Foxconn and whatnot, and Foxconn just seems like a wonderful place to work at. Hence why they have those massive nets to prevent people from seppuku. I don't know how YouTube will allow me to say it, but it's clearly a wonderful place to work at, as is, right? But the Chinese youngsters are revolting, and they're doing this movement that I cannot pronounce in their native language, but it translates to "let it rot," where they are refusing to work. And now the Chinese government is begging the young people to come back to work, which, hey, I hope they don't, because good for them. I'm not surprised that even the kids of China are refusing to work and refusing to adult, because what do they have to look forward to? Obviously we don't have it nearly as bad in the United States to justify it, but hey, kids in China, they're pretty justified with doing this in my opinion. But I get why a lot of, American youngsters also don't see a whole lot of perspective here for the future. Our country seems to be heading towards a pretty shitty future as well, so I don't blame them. You go to the grocery store, you gotta sell your kidney. Every month when you're done paying rent, you gotta sell the other kidney. Girls feel like they can't just have a job anymore. Every single one of them has to have an OnlyFans just to pay the bills. Guys need to do Uber after work because just a regular day job is not good enough anymore. And they have the audacity to still talk about increasing the age of retirement. That one thing that most of us are not even going to hit because we're going to die before we ever get to retire. And even if we do retire, we don't have enough money to retire, so we're going to keep working anyway. They have the audacity to talk about raising the age of retirement. I know who's not getting elected. I'm not big, I've never run for office. I don't know what all you have to say to win an election, but raising the age of retirement just before an election, talking about that is probably not the best talking point if you want to get elected. So probably a bad move. I appreciate the honesty. Hey, I applaud the straightforwardness and just being upfront with your positions, but you're probably not going to get elected. So I get why the youngsters are shifting. Can we bring the crack pipes back? Is that a bad position to have? Like, bring crack back? Make crack acceptable again? Just tweaking out on the sidewalk? Because at least then, I feel like there's more of a mystique to it, I feel like there's more of like a realness also to it. It's more grounded than just laying in your bed and shifting. I'm more of a fan of the crack pipes, But maybe that's just me. Maybe they're doing the more healthy thing. Maybe it is better to shift than to smoke crack. As a boomer, it seems weird to me. I remember taking the bus and just seeing people tweaking out on the bus, and I'm like, that guy looks like he's having a good time. That seems like a good time. I wouldn't do it. It seems like it'll ruin your life, but while you're doing it, it seems like a good time. Shifting seems like a bad time altogether. It just seems like you're convincing yourself to be delusional. I don't know what's worst. What else is going on that we can just briefly glance over? Let's see. Most recently, I know that Microsoft is laying off, quote unquote, and shutting down a bunch of game studios to cut costs. People are mad at Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson because he's a liar and made out of plastic, so people are upset with him for a multitude of reasons we don't need to get into. We have the protests being shut down left and right. If you're not in the US, we've been having a ton of protests at college campuses and outside because of the Israel and Palestine conflict and whatnot. We don't need to get into that, but there's a lot of police intervention and things going on in the country. Things are just like going to shit. People are getting laid off. People are getting canceled on the internet. Protests are happening. Honestly, I've been in the United States now for 13 years. That seems to be the general state of affairs. People getting canceled, some sort of protest across the country, and people getting laid off. That seems like life in America since I've been here, so I don't know why people are acting like any of this is new. To me, it's just that's how it's been since I was in school. It's the same shit. Same shit, different stall, as my good friend would say. In other extremely incredible and scientific news, furries are taking over public schools. That's right. The furries are invading your local middle school. And I don't know if it's high schools too. I heard about the middle schools, but I'm seeing this and going on in several schools now where people are walking out and protesting the furries. And I saw this once, and apparently it's going on in more than one school, where the schools are getting completely taken over by people in fursuits and biting on their ankles and scratching each other and whatever else it is that furries do. So I will be this first to say I am not a hater of the furries. I don't dislike the furries. I don't think they're all that big of a deal, all right? I think that people have their thing. Everybody has their weird thing that they're into. Everybody, I play Yu-Gi-Oh! I do other weird things, right? Being a furry is not one of them. However, who am I to judge? With that said, however, I don't think that school is the place for that. And I find it very weird that people get to dress up like that and still be allowed into school. I think that in the pursuit of acceptance, Americans have accepted fuckery. And there's a point where fuckery needs to be dealt with. And this is one of those points. I've never experienced this because, well, I went to a school that had a uniform. Can we bring back the uniforms? Because the uniforms gets rid of this problem. It's not that we're discriminating against you. Like if you're a Metallica fan, you can't come to school if you're a Metallica shirt. If you're a furry, you can't come dressed to school as a peacock. It's not because we don't like anime. It's not because we don't like furries. It's not because we don't like rock and roll or metal. It's just because we have a uniform. And just hide behind that excuse and just make it universally unacceptable to wear anything other than a uniform. Suddenly, you get rid of all these problems and you don't discriminate against anybody and nobody gets butthurt. Should it be that way? Probably not. People should just have common sense. Will people ever have common sense? No, because some people are going to go to school with butt plug tails in between their legs, right? So I say bring back the uniforms. That would be a way to solve this problem overnight. Bring back the uniforms. But apparently this is getting so bad that entire schools are having shutdowns and having walkouts with people protesting the furries, and there's a little civil war going on between the non-fursuiters and the furries. And I can't do anything but hope for the best. All I can say is, hey, whatever you're into, just do it after work or after school. There's nothing wrong, I feel like, with being a furry on your own time. That's fine. If you're an honest, tax-paying American, how you choose to dress, who you choose to fuck, who you choose to marry, what you choose to do, it's your own business. Just leave it out of school and work. And that goes to all these also like, whoa, I'm taking a massive detour here in tangent. If you've ever worked for a corporate company, you sit down and you get like, immediately with training, you get exposed to this how to be a decent human being training. Have you guys ever had to do that where it's like, don't be racist, don't be sexist, don't grow people, don't be a fuckhead, don't say this word, don't say that word, don't do this. And it's just like, do you have to teach people this? Because I feel like if you have to teach people this stuff, I don't feel like a little video before work is going to fix that. The little how to be a normal human being, how to be a half decent human being crash course. I don't feel like that helps. Like, do you think that really like a neo-Nazi, some sort of skinhead is going to go to work and is going to like, oh, I never knew this was wrong. After this video provided by my company, I am now no longer going to be a skinhead. Wow, I was wrong. I don't think that's going to work, right? So why submit the average person and the general normal population to the how to be a normal human being crash course? That also goes to that, I don't know how in the world that's related to furries. It's not related at all, but it's just a little detour here I feel like taking. I felt like they were related. I don't remember what was the association, but I feel like in some way they are related. And then the best ones are the active shooter ones. Those are my favorite. Just, what is it, like, run, hide, and fight or some shit as if I'm gonna fight? Dude, I'm so fucking out of there. I'm jumping out the window. On these little videos, it's always like, run away, find a place to hide, and as a last resort, fight. I'm just like, bro, do you think I'm gonna fight a guy with an AK-47? Fuck no. I'm using everybody as a human shield. I am jumping out the window. I am begging for my life. I am doing everything possible, but the last thing I'm gonna do is fight. I just love those videos. It just makes it real tense. Like your first day of work at Walmart, you're feeling good. In the last year, there have been 300 instances in Walmarts of active shooting. Your chances of survival are 0.1%. If you don't watch this video, then it'll be 0.2. Oh, great. That's a great first day of work. Then you walk out of the training room and suddenly everyone's a suspect. Some old lady walks up in a stroll and you're looking in her pocket. You're looking at her hands. You're not pulling a gun on me, are you? It just makes everybody super paranoid. Just like those damn fire drills and earthquake drills at school. You're in the middle of math class. Next thing you know, starts this fucking hellish alarm. All hell's breaking loose. It's World to Worlds all of a sudden. The aliens are invading. Everybody's hiding under their desk or going like outside. And everybody knows it's like nobody believes it. That's the problem with these drills. The problem with the drills is nobody believes them. And they happen so often that when something's actually happening, everybody's going to go like, oh, it's just a drill. It's just a drill. Nobody's going to take it serious. So you shouldn't do drills. You should just tell people what to do and remind them in writing or just verbally, hey, if this happens, this is what we do. Okay, we've covered this. These fire drills and earthquake drills that they have in the United States are just the most cartoonish dystopian things when, at least as a Brazilian, we don't have that in Brazil. At least up until when I went to school, we didn't have drills for anything. I knew about it because you see it in movies and TV and stuff. But you see that and it just reminds me of something like Cold War times, like nuclear bomb shelter drills. Some fucking alarm goes on. Everybody starts freaking out and hiding under the desk because Russia's bombing their country out of nowhere. That's what it reminds me of. Does that actually work? Like, have fire drills? I mean, I'm sure there's some metric and some statistic that proves or shows, and I'm a fucking idiot, that this actually works. And then when things actually happen, kids and teenagers are more inclined to follow the drill, and, you know, there's an increased statistical chance of safety or survival by following these drills. I just know that for me, none of this was ever real and never actually happened, and nobody took it serious. Everybody just walked out, got on their phone and started playing a game, did whatever, and nobody was taking it serious. Kind of like the bomb threats. My school, someone called in a bomb threat at least once a week for us to get a day off. Once or twice a week, especially before a final or something, there was a bomb threat. And it got so bad and it was such like an often thing that even the school stopped taking it serious. Parents would just get emails like, hey, someone called a bomb threat again. Granted, this has happened every week for the past 5 years. However, we are obliged by law to let you know, and you have the option of leaving your kid at home. However, if you don't want your kid to fail class, you should probably make them come to school anyway. But, you know, we have to let you know. That was just, okay, I guess I don't gotta go to school today. I kind of liked it. And there was never actually a real bomb that went off. So if there was a real bomb that went off and those kids did go to school, that would be pretty shitty, right? But because it never happened, it was kind of funny. Everybody was in on the joke at that point. I never called a bomb threat, right? I've done other things. A bomb threat is not one of them. I mean, but then again, I did go to a public school where at least once every other week, either once a week or once every other week, in the middle of recess, I would see the cops bring in those white German shepherds, whatever they call them, the Belgian shepherds, and they would sniff out lockers looking for drugs. So I did go to a pretty rough school when I came to the United States, so maybe that doesn't happen at everyone's school. But at my school, it was a threat of a bombing every week, and nobody cared anymore. And it kind of became the fire drill and the earthquake drill. Just nobody cared. It was just an excuse to get out of class. You know, I've done a lot of things growing up. I've talked about some of them, but, you know, calling in bomb threats and doing things like that was not one of them. You know, I was more of one of those trick or treat, don't give me a treat, I'll burn your house down kind of kids. No, I'm kidding, but at the same time, kind of kidding, not really. I mean, I wasn't intentionally. Okay, this now needs an explanation. There's this new movie that came out that I forget the name, and it's with John Cena, Zac Efron, one other comedian. It's with a few different. It's a decent movie. It's not great. It's kind of funny, and essentially on the movie, they do a trick or treat thing, and they end up burning someone's house down because they were doing a prank, right? I can relate because I've done that. Thankfully, nobody's house burned down, but we did their trick or treat. They didn't answer the door. So we did a prank, and of course we couldn't be normal and just egg the house, right? They had one of those little mechanized ghost things with like a cloth over it, and we tied it up in toilet paper and set it on fire. Now that could have been really bad. I'm not endorsing this. I was probably 11, I think, when this happened. Where were my parents? That's a great question. They should have been more present. But that did happen, and it could have very well burned the house. So keep an eye on your kids. I think that's my experience as a teenager and as a kid. Thinking about the things that I've done, some of which cannot be mentioned in this podcast, I am measuring how much I say. There's a fine balance, I feel like, nowadays where we're overly pampering and over policing our kids versus back when I was growing up where our parents just didn't give a shit and we were doing things that we shouldn't be doing. I think there's a healthy balance. But with the world the way it is, I kind of feel for kids. Like, there's not a lot of kids that get to just go outside by themselves at night and get to go trick or treating. That's something that I got to do even in Brazil, at least on the apartment complex that we lived. But kids now, like, they have to go with their parents, and it's like a really young kid thing to do. Like, you don't see a lot of teenagers just fucking around and doing that kind of stuff anymore. And it's kind of sad. You don't see a lot of kids outside anymore in general. I blame one of two things. I either blame Fortnite for this happening, or I blame the weird dude in a van. I say that probably not being able to go trick or treating is a good thing. I think that it's good for the safety of kids, right? There's too many creepy weird dudes in the van, and Fortnite is more fun than going trick or treating. But that is an experience that I got to have, like almost burning someone's house down. That I don't think that kids now they're gonna be able to have that, and it makes me sad. And also, kids now got to deal with weird crap like people putting razor blades in their candy. So, you know what? It's probably better where we just have some sort of Halloween party. You know, the teenagers know what's up. They just have some sort of Halloween party. Everybody gets drunk, everybody gets high, and that's that. You know, like no razor blade candy. That's probably not the best idea. I don't think I'm going to let my kid go trick or treating because there's just too many weird people in the world now. It didn't used to be like that, but now people have gotten weird. And you can't seem to be able to trust your neighbor to not put a razor blade in the fucking candy. That's the level that we've come to. So kids are not trick-or-treating anymore. Now they're at home shifting. And we've come full circle here back to the shifting. And we get back to the answer being crack pipes. And I pose the question to you. Has the war on drugs made the country worse? Has the war on drugs been responsible for the furries, for the educational videos at work, for razor blades in the candy? I pose the question to you. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that back in the day, you used to see a dude on the curb of the sidewalk tweaking out on the floor, but there were also no razor blades on the candy. Could there be a correlation? I leave that question to you, a little food for thought, something to think about, and I hope you have a great week.